Recording.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Bill Newell with MSO News Sports, joined by Phil Stacey, Executive Sports Editor of the Salem News, Matt Williams, the Assistant Sports Editor there to his right, Nick Kukuru, Sports Editor of the Gloucester Times, and down at the bottom of, at least on my screen anyways, is Nick Giannino from the Salem News Sports staff. Big introduction to you guys this week. You know, maybe we don't do that enough, huh? But welcome.
Thank you.
Well, as we've been doing the last several weeks, it's been we're gearing up to start with high school football, so we can take a look at some of the highlights from this past weekend. Actually, big picture, I remember last week we talked about the fact that there was only like one 100-yard rusher in the area. We got a few more this week, so we did get a few more 100-yard rushers, at least on the North Shore from this past weekend.
You know, one of the games I was at this weekend, I thought both coaches actually paraphrased the same thing, which I thought was interesting. You have all this time to prepare for your first game, but you only have 6 or 7 days to prepare for week 2. So you almost get a clearer sense on what your team is after the second game than you do the first game. And if you think about it, I think there's a lot of truth in it. It's telling, you know, how much your team either rebounded off a loss or how they prepared after a win in week 1 and what they need to do moving forward now. And there's all kinds of case examples of that. You have teams like Peabody and Beverly, which won fairly handily on opening night, but then lost the following week. You have other teams like Masconomet, St. John's Prep, Bishop Fenwick that all, Swampscott, Marblehead that all won opening day and then responded with good wins the second week. So everybody's a different case study, I suppose, but there is something I think to that week 2 analysis on how you view your team and what you need to do moving forward.
You know, I think, you know, as you were talking about that, Phil, I think we've often talked about how coaches say, well, from week 1 to week 2, we make our most improvement during the course of the year in the weekly battles, if you will. But look at the Patriots, for example. I'm not to bring the Patriots into this too early here, but I'm going to do it because we didn't know about this team too much the first weekend after Miami. We know a little bit more about them, but they still have a lot of work to do. But at least they can win a game now and then, you know, I feel we learned a lot about the Patriots this past weekend as well. I don't need you guys to comment on that piece, but I mean, it's just one of those things for everybody that's kind of tuned into this. It's a good, you know, I think comparison, I think to what you're talking about, Phil, is that the team did make some improvements from the previous week, but they're still not all there yet. So I think all these coaches want to see their teams continue to improve and step forward. One of the biggest wins was the Prep win over Central Catholic. I mean, people were billing this game as a huge contest, but the Prep ended up really dominating that game with that 49-14 win.
I don't know if anybody else wants to touch on it, but I'm not surprised they won. I'm surprised by the margin of victory and the ease in which they did it. Seemed like they had a real chip on their shoulder, real or imagined. Whatever it was, it worked. I think it's certainly not easy for a school like St. John's to play the everybody against us card, you know, with the talent that they have coming in and whatnot. But the facts remain the same. You know, the schedule is what it is that they play. And Central came in as a very hyped opponent, having a quarterback who accounted for 10 touchdowns the previous week. And I think they scored 67 points. And a lot of people felt that the Prep kind of squeaked by in their opener, 47-42, touchdown pass last minute. Well, they certainly showed at least, you know, on home turf this past weekend what they're capable of. Jack Perry was 6 touchdown passes all in the first half. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. I'm guessing he could have had a 10 spot of his own if they left him in there to throw in the second half after building a 35-point lead. They didn't do that, obviously, but Jackson Delaney with 3 touchdown catches. He went over 130 yards receiving. Jesse O'Fury had a pair of touchdown catches. James Guy went over $115 on the ground. He scored another run. Great game from Charlie Stark defensively. The junior outside linebacker had a couple of sacks, a lot of pressures. Prep defense played great. Held Central to 7 points through 3 quarters, and I think the backups let in a score late. But boy, if you're St. John's, you're really going to be happy with that result. Now they're playing a Haverhill team at home that has lost to Beverly and Danvers back-to-back weeks and been shut out both games. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think the Prep will win this week. But I don't think that Coach Brian St. Pierre is looking for them to ease off the gas by any stretch. He wants them to keep their pedal to the metal, so to speak, and continue to improve, continue to get better, because after this, it's going to be the Catholic Conference slate that they have. So they don't want to be going into that flat. They want to go in and we want to take care of business, I'm sure, early Friday night against Haverhill, but play well in doing it.
And back to our point earlier, I mean, the Prep certainly defining themselves after that win this weekend against Central Catholic. You got Masco with a win over Peabody. Danvers, as you mentioned, Phil, with a win at Haverhill over the weekend. Hamilton Wenham moving to 2-0, beating Watertown 14-6. Marblehead over Classical 54-20. Salem picked up a win out of Martha's Vineyard 8-6 in OT. And so you've got some of those games. You guys, Matt, you want to pick up on? I think Peabody has to be kind of disappointed after getting off to a good start, but losing to Masco over the weekend.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think just touching on what Phil said about Charlie Stark, right? I mean, I think you have to touch less on Peabody's disappointment and more on Masco's excitement. I mean, this is a team that had a really lousy fall 2 season and didn't want to let that happen again. And that was kind of the linchpin game, and their coaching staff made it a big deal a year ago that week. It was week 3, but it was the second game, I believe, for both teams because of the quarantines and whatnot. And Peabody won a close game and their season went on the up. Masco lost that close game and their season went on the down. And so Masco really considered this game a turning point and wanted to make sure that, that they got some revenge. Peabody beat them on their home field. Now they've got to win on, on this home field. And I just think, it's incredible when you look at what Masco has been able to do with the number of kids that they've lost from their team. I mean, my goodness, Charlie Stark going to the Prep, all those kids that went to Pingree, Hudson Weidman and the Terrio brothers, and more. I mean, you put all those kids on one football team, you're talking about a team that could probably win a state championship and give Marblehead a run for its money. And the kids that remain at Masco, they play with that Masco pride instead. They're not hanging their head about the guys that left them. They're instead going to try to win games. And I think they've sort of announced that they're in the race here for the Northeastern Conference North title. They're a big team. They're a physical team. I love the way they run the ball, and I love the way they get to the perimeter. And they're 2 tight ends and defensive ends, Tyler McMahon and Canada Hunt, number 87 and number 88. Excellent guys, both on offense and defense. They're able to set the edge, set the perimeter, keep passers in the pocket and rush their throws on offense, and allow the Nadworny brothers to get outside and run free, when they're blocking. And so I don't know that there's anybody in the league that has 2 ends like that can match up. Those guys are matchup nightmares. I thought they were really kind of hidden gem, game breaker type guys in this game. Of course, you look at what they were able to do up front, what the Nadworny brothers were able to do on the ball. But I think the key to the game were those 2 big guys on the outside, setting the edge on both offense and defense, 87 and 88 for Masco.
Yeah, and Masco plays at Winchester Friday night. Peabody playing host to Beverly. Let me bring Nick Kukuru in. Nick, what do you want to discuss from up in the Cape Ann area? Manchester Essex picked up another win over the weekend.
Yeah, Manchester Essex off to a great start. They followed up that win over Ipswich. They pounded on Neshoba Tech. I mean, they took care of business. I don't think Neshoba Tech's the strongest program, but they've had an early combination going. Quarterback Brennan Twombly and receiver AJ Palazzola have been unstoppable. I mean, Palazzola was their best offensive player a year ago in the passing game, and they couldn't run the ball at all playing in the Cal last year. So everybody knew they were going to him, and he still make big plays. And they're running it a lot better this year, kind of spreading it out. But you still got to give Palazzola extra attention. But he had 2 touchdown receptions each of the first 2 weeks, had a 100-yard game the first game, and he also ran back an interception and a kickoff on Friday night. So he had a monster game. And quarterback Brennan Twombly, 4 touchdown passes. He has 7 touchdown passes in the first 2 games, and he also ran back an interception for a touchdown. So Manchester Essex, they're in the Commonwealth now, and they're going to be a contender there. They're looking like a Division 8 playoff team. We'll see how they stack up with those teams once they get there. But they're they're definitely a team to take seriously in those lower divisions.
Nick G, were you at the Hamilton Wenham game this past weekend, or do I have
was
that
not.
wrong? Oh
No,
no, okay.
I was at Marblehead and Classical.
Oh yeah, okay.
So I can
Oh.
touch upon that real quick. I mean, we
Yeah,
know
let's
what
do-
to expect with Marblehead these days, but I think it just boils down to they had that next gear. Lynn Classical took an early lead. They were throwing the ball, they were running the ball, giving some trouble to Marblehead, and Marblehead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nick. I don't. I might have done something here. I didn't mean to do anything here. Somehow, Nick,
Good.
you're muted. There we go. I'm sorry. There we go.
Yeah, so no, as I was saying, Marblehead, like I said, got off to that slow start. Lynn Classical took an early lead. Then Marblehead scored, and you said, okay, they're probably just going to run away with this thing. And then Classical scored again, and it had the makings of kind of a back and forth first half there. But Marblehead just kind of turned a corner, revved things up a little bit, and took control. I mean, it was no contest from there. They scored like 5 touchdowns in a row. As you mentioned, ended up winning 54-20. So they just have so many weapons on both sides of the ball. Connor Cronin was running the ball really well. Josh Robertson was putting the ball in the right spot. He had a few touchdown passes and a couple touchdown runs. George Percy, you can throw him in there to run. James Duty had a couple nice catches in the passing game. So they just have, like I said, a lot of weapons, and they're going to be tough to beat once again this year. I thought Lynn Classical played about as well as they could for that first quarter and a half or so, and then Marblehead just put the hurting on them.
Yeah. Gentlemen, do you guys want to look ahead to games coming up this weekend? Games to keep an eye on. I know I mentioned Beverly Peabody. Both teams won on their opening weekends, but both lost this past weekend. I actually think, let me just mention I mentioned Hamilton Wenham a moment ago, but they beat Watertown 14-6. And this Saturday, I think this is an interesting game. I would think they host Amesbury. Amesbury won last weekend in the Cape Ann League. So I don't know, that might be a game to watch in that Cape Ann League.
I've seen both of them recently. They're both physical. I mean, obviously Hamilton Wenham, I don't know if they have a ton of firepower, but you're going to be in a rock fight with them every time you go out there. And Amesbury's kind of the same way. They just kind of, they run like a T formation, and they're going to run some power stuff and try to stop it, and they're good at it. So that's going to be a slugfest.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to, Hamilton Wenham, just getting the Domaraki brothers back, what a difference they make for those boys. And Chris Collins, I believe is only a sophomore, is a great linebacker. So they got a great 1-2 punch at linebacker with Domaraki and Collins. And the funny thing is they're blocking kicks like crazy. Chris Collins had a couple of block kicks last year as a freshman. I think he blocked a punt against Gloucester, right, Nick?
Well, he might as well have. They might as well have blocked 2. They got the punt off, but they ended up being like 0-yard punts or 1
And he
yard.
did-
So it might as well have been a block. And not officially a block, but it was as good as a block.
He blocked a punt against Watertown. And then when Watertown tried to tie the game in the third quarter, Marcus Norton came around the edge and blocked the extra point. So whatever they're doing on special teams there at Hamilton Wenham, it's working.
We should note too, speaking of Hamilton, that Pingree returns to action for the first time in 2 years this weekend. They're hosting a game at 2:00 this Saturday, and I know that Coach Flynn and his team are ready to go. I don't know how much we've touched on them during the preseason or whatnot, but obviously, they have some talent over there. Their big boy in the line there, Willie, what's his last name? Nino Mangione, is that it? Magnoni?
Mangano, Nico.
I was going to say, you're right there, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I was close. he's a big boy, getting some real serious college looks. And, of course, we're used to them having a lot of talent in the backfield and split out wide and things like that. So I have to imagine those boys have been chomping at the bit to get back out there in a real game and eager to show what they can do this weekend.
Yeah, and I'm just looking here. And, another team we really haven't talked about, but Swampscott 2-0. They're in that North Division this year in the Northeastern Conference, but they beat Lynn English this past weekend. And Swampscott back in action, playing host to Gloucester on Friday night, as I have it on.
Yeah, we've had Scott Cooper cover both of those games for us, so I know none of us have had a chance to see Swampscott yet. But if you just look at how they improved from week 1 to week 2, I think they beat non-league Leicester.
Yeah.
Fairly, I don't want to say handily. That's not true because it was a 3-point game, but they were ahead for a long while and they gave up a couple of scores late in the fourth quarter that I know head coach Bob Serino wasn't happy about. So they really came out and took care of business against English this week, 41-14 in the, I think it was the 6th annual Jeff Blydell Cup, played in memory of the youth sports coach who had ties to both schools and programs. We don't say this a lot about Swampscott, but they got it done on the ground. Xavier Bascon had 146 yards and 4 touchdowns. Cam O'Brien had another 78 yards on the ground, the quarterback, and scored a touchdown. They can certainly throw the ball when they need to. He did throw a touchdown pass the other day to Cole Hamernick, but they were getting it done. The ground was what was available to them, so that's what they took advantage of. And defensively, they did a great job against what can be an explosive English team. So they head into Gloucester this week, or they host Gloucester this week, I should say. But they're playing very, very good ball. And for a Gloucester team that's looking for its first win, they could be up. It could be in a tough situation for them as far as trying to procure that.
Yeah, that's looking like a tough matchup for them. I know this week Malden Catholic just kind of had too many athletes for them to handle, and I know Swampscott's super athletic as they usually are. So that might be on paper a tough matchup. Gloucester will kind of have to maybe slow that down and grind it out, but I don't know. That's going to be tough to do.
Hey, how about this Fenwick game Friday night as they host Austin Prep? Any preview on that? Any insight on that matchup?
Yeah, I went to see Fenwick play Saturday afternoon. They played at Hormel Stadium. I don't know if you guys have been there recently. I've been there maybe 2 or 3 times the last 3 or 4 years. That really looks nice compared to what it used to look like. Boy, that used to look like a cow pasture, off of 93. They fixed it up nicely with the turf, and the stands look nice. It's a good spot to watch a game there, but I digress. Fenwick, as we know, they graduated a ton of kids from that, a team for the ages, let's say. I mean, I know they played 6 games in the spring, but boy, they rolled over everybody. They tried to get St. John's Prep for a game. I mean, they were really willing to take on all comers really last season. So they lost a ton of talent, both sides of the ball. You wonder how they're going to do this year. They're going to stumble. They come out and they beat South Hadley, on opening day. Then they open up Catholic Central League play, and they really, waxed Arlington Catholic. And, I don't think AC talent-wise matched up with Fenwick, but they did have some athletes. I thought their quarterback was pretty mobile, and if he was able to get outside the pocket, I think he could do some damage, but Fenwick didn't allow him to do that. They took control early. They put up 21 points in the first quarter. They put up another 20 in the third quarter, so it was running time in the fourth quarter, which as a sports writer, awesome. They seem to really have it working well with the coach's son, Stephen Woods, at quarterback. I wouldn't say he's a veteran, but he's certainly well versed in the system. First year starter. He did start the opener in the spring, but this is his first time really as the number 1 guy under center. Does a really nice job with those read pass options. He ran for 118 yards. He threw for 146 the other day. Troy Irizarry has become the number 1 back for Fenwick. He's tough to bring down. He runs hard. He runs low to the ground. He's got 2 hands on the football at all times. He scored 3 times the other day. Costa Beechin is a running receiving threat. Luke Connolly is only a sophomore, brother of Jake Connolly, who was our Salem News Player of the Year last year. Luke shows a lot of promise. They get some guys who get after it defensively. They're ripping balls out. They're gang tackling. They're great in pass coverage. So yeah, it's a different team completely than it was a year ago, but I still think the talent trail is pretty deep at Fenwick. Will they go undefeated again? That's probably unlikely, but I think they're going to play well in every single game. Now, Coach Woods told me that Austin Prep is a better team than they have been in recent years. They run some misdirection stuff. They have some athletes of their own. They're going to cause Fenwick some problems. So it's probably going to be the first real test for Fenwick, and we'll get a better idea of how they are after this game. But based on what I saw Saturday, I mean, when the engines are firing, they look pretty good.
Hey, what?
Has lost both their games, right? I know they lost to Pentucket, and I think
They lost to Pentucket, and then they lost to Winthrop
yeah,
by 2
that was
points.
a close one.
Yeah, they went for a 2-point conversion in the final minute, didn't get it. But, you know, like I said, Coach Woods has seen them both games on film. He really likes what he sees out of them. He thinks that that record is a little bit deceiving, you know, and the fact that Pentucket is unbeaten, and I want to say Winthrop is too. I can't remember if they won their opening game or not, but off the top of my head, I think they're unbeaten as well. So, you know, it'll be a test for the Crusaders.
Hey, one other game I want to have you guys comment on. North Andover, a team that beat up on Beverly 34-0, travels to Marblehead Friday night. So on paper, you would think that looks like an interesting matchup. Any thoughts on that one?
I mean, Nick, if you want to talk about Marblehead, I can chime in on what I saw at North Andover.
Yeah, well, like I said, it seems like Marblehead just reloads every year. You know, this is the first time I saw them this past Friday, and they got off to that shaky start, and I'm saying, okay, maybe they're beatable this year. Maybe Classical's got a decent team this year as far as the Lynn teams go. Then Marblehead they switched gears. They just took it to another level. Their offense was very efficient. Jim Rudloff put it best. I think he simplified things, and he said, we just went out there and executed. You know, we didn't try to do anything too fancy. We ran the ball when we needed to run. We passed the ball when we needed to pass, and they find success in both those areas. And then defensively, I thought their cornerbacks did a great job. They rushed the quarterback pretty well, you know, up front, even for a slight lack of size in terms of what Marblehead's had over the years. But they're going to be right there again. They're deep. Even when they went to their JV, they were still, you know, getting stops and moving the ball on offense. So, you know, I think they're going to be the team to beat again in the NEC. And you guys can chime in and correct me if I'm wrong, but they looked pretty impressive to me.
No, I don't think you're wrong there at all. I think anybody would say that Marblehead is the, you know, if not the cream of the crop, then certainly the forebearers here for this season, just based on who they have back. George Percy, Josh Robertson, Connor Cronin, James Duty, James Galante,
Right.
On and on and on there. I did, as I said, I saw North Andover the other day. I think an interesting subplot of this game Friday night will be how the two teams' lines play. I know we've said a few times in this podcast that if there is an area that is less strong, at least perceived than others for Marblehead, it might be that line. They're young up front. I think North Andover has some of the same issues, and they are not particularly big. They had a very big center. David Cooperstein was his name. I want to say he was about 6'5" and 280 pounds in the middle, but the two guards next to him looked considerably smaller, and the two tackles were about the same size. So they're not super big up front. What I saw out of North Andover is they try to move the ball quickly, a lot of quick hitters, kind of stay in constant motion, don't give the defense a chance to rest. Jack O'Connell, the quarterback, I think he's every bit as athletic as Josh Robertson is from Marblehead. Very active when the pocket breaks down or in design runs where he can take the ball himself. He gets the ball out in space to his receivers quickly. He worked really well the other day with AJ Lawrence they kind of instituted for the Beverly game these kind of jet sweep passes where he just kind of in motion goes between the center and the quarterback and takes a little pitch and shoots up the corners for yardage. He had some success getting the ball out to Jack Ferrulo in space. Brendan Regan caught some passes from him. Nick Ankowitz was another guy for North Reading who got the ball in space and was able to do some things. So Marblehead is really going to have to cover the whole field. Defensively, I thought North Andover did a nice job shutting down Beverly's wing T attack. As we know, I mean, that's still a work in progress for them where it's only 2 games into it under a new offense for Beverly. Marblehead is much more veteran laden offensively with the spread that they run and all the different mixes they have. So that'll be a big test for North Andover. I don't know if you call this game a toss up because, naturally we think, boy, Marblehead at home, they don't get beat very often. But, North Andover coming out of the MVC, good team. Their only loss was to Lincoln Sudbury, which is generally regarded as a top 10 team in the state. So the Magicians will have their proverbial hands full, although you could say the same thing about North Reading. I think it'll be a terrific game both ways.
I think another thing that Marblehead does really well too is in-game adjustments. Just looking at the last week, I know it was classical, but they were really beating them a lot of times with the screen pass. And after the first quarter or so, Marblehead just started shutting that down. Lynn kept trying to come back to it. They didn't really have much success with it on the stretch. So, year in and year out, I think Rudloff and his coaching staff do a really good job of making in-game adjustments and kind of shutting down what the other team do.
What'd you say, Willie?
It's North Andover. Yeah, I think somebody said North Reading.
Yeah, North Andover, yeah.
Well, gentlemen, that would be it for me on the football ranks. Anything other topics that you guys want to have in our last 5 minutes? I got one more I would like to bring up actually in a moment, but any other sports pieces?
I'd like to talk a little bit about boys soccer. Just Masconomet in general. I want to highlight them. They're off to a ridiculous start. We know they're, year in and year out, they're always kind of the class of whatever conference they're in. They dominated the Cal for years, now moving on to the NEC, and they're another team that just seems to reload and, has a really good program that the kids buy into, and they've been ready to play. I mean, let's see, they 4-0 with wins over North Andover, Danvers, Saugus, and Peabody. And that most recent one against Peabody was a 7-0 win. And I thought Peabody looked really good in their first game against Salem. They got a lot of talent. So for Masco to beat that team 7-0, that was pretty surprising. And, they're going to be tough to beat. They played Beverly on October 1st, which is going to be a game to look out for because I think Beverly's got a really good squad this year as well.
Yeah, I wanted to say, congratulations to the Peabody field hockey team. They got their first win the other day when they beat Everett 3-1. It's a young program that I know Tony Palmieri is trying to build back up. And after a couple of tough losses to start the season, they rebound and get in the win column. Good for them, certainly. Gianna Felice, the goaltender. She's seen a lot of shots early on. I think she had 28 saves against Masco in the opener, which is crazy. I mean, usually goalie might make 4 saves, 7 saves, something like that. She had a ton in that opener, but she led them to the win. Couple goals from Jackie Scopa, goal and an assist from Gina Terenzano. Bella DeChico had a couple of assists. So hopefully there's more where that comes from for the Tanners.
Yep.
Today, which is Monday. And then they play at Danvers and at Saugus later this week. So I know they're hoping to build off of that non-league win over Everett the other day.
Yeah, going back into boys soccer, Gloucester might, be staking its claim as one of the teams to beat in the NEC South. They're 3-0, and they've allowed 2 goals in 3 games, and they've scored 20 goals. So they're off to a big start. Andrew Coelho is their big sniper. He's got 6 goals already. Gino Tripoli has 4 goals. He's a sophomore striker, real big physical player. And they had a big win over Danvers last week, 2-1. Scored the winner with 6 minutes left. In a game that they controlled, but Danvers real pesky, scrappy team kind of hung around. But Gloucester's constant pressure kind of paid off in the end. And I know, Coach Armando Marnoto in Gloucester, I think he seems to think Marblehead and Winthrop are going to be the 2 big tests in the NEC South this year. And I know they play Winthrop this week, so that'll be a good barometer for that section of the NEC.
Hey, got to shout out Beverly Volleyball. Ended that long streak of Danvers volleyball. So that's that's done. I don't know off the top of my head. I tried to look it up real fast and failed. So I think it was 77. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's longer or shorter than that Danvers High Northeastern Conference baseball winning streak. So that's going to be close. I think they were both in the 70s, or I don't remember if that streak of the Falcon baseball team hit 80, but I guess
I
the
thought that was
longest.
like 66 or so, but I could be wrong off the top of my head. I can't remember.
So it could be that the volleyball has the bragging
Yeah.
rights there, but the longest active win streak in the NEC, I guess, probably belongs to Danvers girls soccer. I think. I mean, Masco field hockey jump league, so they don't have that many. Same for Masco boys soccer. You know, I mean, Masco field hockey probably hasn't lost a league game in a long time, but not all in the NEC, in other words. So Danvers girls soccer has NEC unbeaten streaks around 27 or so right now. So that might be the longest one. So one Danvers streak ends and another one continues. And, you know, I guess, you know, not talking about cross country too. I mean, to talk about, you know, individual sports, because obviously Beverly girls cross country hasn't lost in probably 60 or 70 meets too. So anyway,
This is,
that's our check on unbeaten streaks here for the week.
It's funny, I was just over at their track practice, cross-country practice last week, Willie, and they've won their first 2 meets this year, so it's now up to 58 meets in a row for them.
Okay, I would have thought more. Interesting.
Yeah, I know, right? So they haven't lost a meet since 2012. That was the last time they lost a cross-country meet in the conference.
Right, yeah, that would have been the team that had Katarina Rocha and Heather McLean on it. So
Yeah.
we won't hold that against them.
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good.
Decent run. It took an actual Olympian to beat the Beverly girls cross country team.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because head coach Dave Jellison said to me that, you know, we go on streaks, we get fortunate, you know, we go a few years without being beaten, and then it takes you know, he's like every once in a while a Peabody will beat us or a Marblehead will beat us, and I tell the girls, you know, it takes a Shalane Flanagan or a Heather McLean to beat you, and they're only Olympians, so you're not doing too badly. You know?
Exactly, that's exactly right.
I guess,
That's funny.
yeah, even I could put a positive spin on that, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there you go. You know, there've been you know, you guys, when we interact with coaches over the North Shore, there's a bunch of great coaches, and we lost one this past week, Ben Goodhue, who coached multiple sports. Most recently was a phys ed teacher at Beverly High School, lost his battle with cancer. He has a young family, beautiful young family. I know I did a couple of features with him in the last several years. I knew that, you know, he was, you know, taken ill again recently, but he had kind of won the battle a few times, and you know, really had a positive outlook on life. Wonderful man, great coach. I know when I was over at Beverly High School, Giannino, we were over at basketball games, and he'd have his family there on the sidelines.
Yeah.
You know, at some of these games over the years.
Love Beverly.
Yeah, loved Beverly, loved the kids, loved, you know, just an outstanding football coach, another multiple sport coach, but we lost him this past week, and it's kind of sad. Just want to give him a little shout out, and family as well.
You know, I think the big word that is attached to Ben is respect. Respect among his fellow coaches, respect among the guys who played for him. They did know how passionate he was about what he did. Passionate about fitness, passionate about training, passionate about competing. Geez, I can remember a time, you know, you talk about how much he cared for the athletes that he had. I happened to be at a wrestling meet, and I don't go to a ton of wrestling meets, but I happened to be at a wrestling meet, Beverly Danvers, and it must have been one of the boys he had coached in football for Beverly. And Ben is right there, like, screaming during the match and pounding the floor like, pin him, pin him, pin him. And I'm thinking to myself, what interest do you have in this? You know, there's no connection for you here, but that's how passionate he was about, you know, competing and seeing things through. And you know, in hindsight, you know, now I look back and I'm like, wow, that's his passion. You know, he couldn't bottle it up. That's who he was, and that's what he was about. He passed that love along to his athletes, and you know, he will certainly be missed. And I feel terribly bad for his wife, Sarah, and their 2 young daughters, and his whole family.
Yeah, absolutely. And our thoughts and prayers are with them all at this point. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us this week, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Bill.